I never thought I'd wake up to the sound of bulldozers on my own property. But that's exactly what happened when a power-hungry HOA decided my ranch was their next target. They thought they could intimidate me into selling. They were wrong. Before we dive into this unbelievable story, let me know where you're watching from today. Drop your country in the comments below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more incredible true stories like this one. The morning started like any other on my 60-acre ranch. I was drinking coffee on my porch, watching the sun rise over the distant mountains. My horses grazed peacefully in the pasture, unaware of the storm that was about to hit our quiet corner of the world. That's when I noticed it, a bright yellow paper nailed to my front gate. Not placed in my mailbox or slipped under the door. Nailed directly into the wood of my handcrafted entrance gate, as if to send a message. Notice of non-compliance, property in violation of Lakeside Community standards. I nearly spat out my coffee. Lakeside Community? My ranch was 5 miles from the nearest HOA development. I'd purposely bought this land to avoid exactly this type of oversight. My family had owned this property for 3 generations, long before any housing development sprouted up in the area. I yanked the notice off my gate and read through it. Apparently, my ranch violated 17 different community guidelines, including excessive livestock presence, non-compliant outbuilding structures, and unapproved agricultural activity. At the bottom was a $7,500 fine and a deadline: comply within 30 days or face enforcement measures. The signature read Victor Harmon, President, Lakeside Estates Homeowners Association. I'd heard stories about Victor. A former corporate real estate developer who'd retired to Lakeside Estates and immediately took over the HOA. Neighbors said he ran it like a small dictatorship, using fines and threats to keep everyone in line. But my ranch wasn't part of Lakeside Estates. Not even close. I called the county recorder's office immediately. The clerk confirmed what I already knew: my property wasn't subject to any HOA covenants. She sounded concerned when I described the notice. "You're the third call this month about Lakeside trying to expand their boundaries," she said. "I'd document everything if I were you." I took her advice seriously, installing security cameras at my gates and key points around the property that same day. It was an expense I hadn't planned for, but something told me I'd need evidence of whatever came next. 2 days later, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to my gate. 2 men in matching polo shirts with Lakeside Estates security embroidered on the chest stepped out. One carried a clipboard, the other a measuring tape. Neither looked like they belonged anywhere near a ranch. I met them at the gate, keeping it locked between us. "Can I help you, gentlemen?" I asked, already recording the conversation on my phone. "Mr. Dawson?" "I'm Greg Winters, compliance officer for Lakeside Estates," the clipboard man said, flashing a laminated ID badge. "We're here to conduct an initial assessment of the violations noted in your notice." "This property isn't part of Lakeside Estates," I replied calmly. "You have no authority here." Greg smiled thinly. "Actually, under the new district expansion approved last month, your parcel falls within our jurisdiction. We can show you the documentation." He held up an official-looking map with boundary lines that conveniently included my ranch. The problem? I checked the county records myself just yesterday. No such expansion existed. "That's interesting," I said, "because the county has no record of this expansion. I'll need to see the official filing number." Their smiles faltered. The second man stepped forward. "Look, Mr. Dawson, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Victor just wants to discuss purchasing your property for a fair price. The violations can disappear if you're reasonable." And there it was, the real agenda. This wasn't about compliance. It was about my land. "I think we're done here," I said. "Please leave my property immediately." "We'll be back," Greg warned as they retreated to their SUV. "And next time we won't be asking nicely." I watched them drive away, a knot forming in my stomach. This was just the beginning. That night, I posted about my experience on the local community forum. Within hours, comments flooded in from neighbors who'd had similar encounters. They tried the same thing with my orchard last year. Victor offered me half market value for my land after hitting me with $12,000 in fake violations. They're trying to build a luxury resort. They need our properties for the golf course expansion. One comment caught my attention. Sarah Miller, who owned 20 acres adjacent to mine, had received the same notice yesterday. We agreed to meet for coffee the next morning. Sarah arrived at the local diner with a thick folder of documents. A retired paralegal, she'd been researching Lakeside Estates since getting her notice. "It's all connected," she explained, spreading papers across the table. Victor Harmon isn't just the HOA president. He's also the silent partner in Evergreen Development Corporation. Look at the business filings. She was right. Victor was using the HOA as cover for a massive land acquisition scheme. The plan was to piece together adjoining properties and flip them to a resort developer for millions. Has anyone fought back? I asked. Sarah's expression darkened. The Williams family tried. They owned that beautiful horse property on Route 16. 3 months of harassment later, they sold for pennies on the dollar. The stress was too much. I thought about my ranch, the home my grandfather built with his own hands, the fields where my father taught me to ride, the peaceful sanctuary I'd planned to pass down to my own children someday. This wasn't just about property. It was about heritage. I'm not selling, I said firmly. Not now, not ever. Sarah squeezed my hand. Then you better get ready for a fight. For the next 2 weeks, the harassment was constant. Citations appeared daily, each with increasing fines. My water line mysteriously broke, flooding my lower pasture. Someone cut a section of my fence, allowing 3 of my horses to escape. Thankfully, a neighbor found them before they reached the highway. The sheriff's department took reports but said their hands were tied without concrete evidence linking the incidents to Lakeside Estates. The cameras caught shadowy figures but never clear enough images for identification. Then came the letter from a law firm representing Lakeside Estates HOA. They claimed my property had been incorporated into their jurisdiction through a legal process called neighborhood integration. Unless I paid all outstanding fines, now totaling over $23,000, and signed their compliance agreement, they would pursue all available remedies. I took the letter to my own lawyer, Michael Chin, who specialized in property rights. This is complete fiction, Michael said after reviewing the documents. There's no such thing as neighborhood integration in this state's property law. The question is, are they bluffing or do they have someone at the county level helping them? We filed counter notices and a cease and desist order against the HOA. Michael assured me they had no legal ground to stand on, but warned me to stay vigilant. People like Victor don't give up easily, he cautioned. And they don't always play by the rules. How right he was. That Friday night, I received a text from Paul Martinez, an old army buddy who lived about an hour away. We had served 2 tours together in Afghanistan, part of the same engineering unit. After discharge, Paul had started a successful construction company that employed primarily veterans. Saw your situation on the community board, his message read. Some of the guys and I are coming by tomorrow to help reinforce your fencing. No arguments. True to his word, Paul arrived early Saturday morning with 5 other veterans from our old unit. They brought materials to strengthen my perimeter fencing and install additional security measures. As we worked, I explained the full situation. This Victor guy sounds like that warlord in Kandahar, remarked Dave, who had been our unit's mechanic. All threat, no legitimate authority. Except this warlord has lawyers and money, I replied. So do we, Paul said quietly. Most of our crew are homeowners who hate HOA overreach. We've got your back on this. By sundown, my ranch perimeter was significantly reinforced. We installed concrete footers beneath the main gate to prevent it from being easily removed, added motion sensor lights at key points, and set up a real-time alert system that would notify both me and Paul if any perimeter breach was detected. Before leaving, Paul handed me a business card. My cousin's a reporter for the regional news network. She's interested in your story. This kind of HOA overreach is happening all over the state. Might be worth talking to her. I took the card, grateful for both the help and the connection. For the first time in weeks, I slept soundly that night. The peace was shattered at 6:17 Monday morning by my phone blaring with security alerts. I jumped out of bed and checked the camera feeds to find a nightmare unfolding at my front gate. 2 yellow bulldozers, a backhoe, and 3 pickup trucks with the Lakeside Estates logo were lined up outside my property. Men in hard hats were removing my newly reinforced gate from its hinges. I immediately called the sheriff's office to report the trespassing, then called Paul. While throwing on clothes, I watched in horror as the bulldozers crashed through where my gate had stood and began advancing toward my house, carving deep tracks into my pasture. Victor Harmon himself stood beside one of the trucks, directing the operation with hand gestures. He wore a suit despite the early hour and dusty conditions, looking absurdly out of place on a ranch. I ran outside just as the lead bulldozer approached my barn. Standing in its path, I held up my phone to show I was recording. This is private property. You are trespassing. The sheriff is on his way. The bulldozer slowed but didn't stop. From a truck window, Victor called out, We have authorization to demolish non-compliant structures under County Ordinance 15B. Move aside or be held liable for obstruction. He waved what looked like an official document with a county seal. I stood my ground, continuing to record. Any authorization you have is fraudulent. This property is not under your jurisdiction. The bulldozer edged closer, now just 30 feet away, its engine roaring threateningly. For a terrifying moment, I wondered if they would actually run me down on my own property. That's when I heard it, the rumble of engines approaching fast from the country road. Not police cruisers, but a convoy of pickup trucks and construction vehicles. Paul had called in reinforcements. 8 heavy-duty trucks roared up my driveway, forming a barrier between me and the bulldozers. From each vehicle stepped men and women in work clothes, many wearing caps or shirts identifying their military branches. Paul's construction crew, over 20 veterans strong, lined up silently behind their vehicles. One by one they crossed their arms and stared down the HOA crew. No weapons, no threats, just the unmistakable presence of people who had faced far worse dangers than an angry HOA president. Paul stepped forward. "Morning, neighbor. Looks like you've got some uninvited guests." Victor seemed momentarily stunned by the arrival of so many witnesses. He quickly recovered, storming toward Paul with his document held high. "This is a legal enforcement action. These people are interfering with county business." "Really?" Paul replied calmly. "Because I just got off the phone with Commissioner Wilson. He says there's no county action authorized for this address. Not today, not ever." Victor's face reddened. "Wilson doesn't have jurisdiction over HOA enforcement." "No," came a new voice as Sheriff Reynolds finally arrived, stepping out of his cruiser. "But I do. And you don't have any enforcement authority here, Mr. Harmon." The sheriff approached, taking in the scene with practiced calm. "Bulldozers, trespassing, destruction of private property. That's just for starters. Would you like to explain why you're demolishing structures on land that doesn't belong to your HOA?" Victor thrust his document toward the sheriff. "We have incorporation papers. This property was legally annexed into Lakeside jurisdiction." Sheriff Reynolds examined the paper briefly before handing it back. "This document has a forged county seal, Mr. Harmon. That's a felony." The color drained from Victor's face. Behind him, the bulldozer operators were already shutting down their engines and climbing out of their cabs, wanting no part of what was clearly turning into a legal disaster. "Everyone with Lakeside Estates, put your hands where I can see them," the sheriff ordered, his deputy already radioing for backup. "You're all being detained for questioning regarding criminal trespassing and property damage." As the HOA crew was lined up against their vehicles, I noticed a woman with a professional camera filming everything from the road. Paul nodded toward her. "My cousin. The reporter I mentioned." I smiled for the first time that morning. Perfect timing. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of legal activity. Victor Harmon was charged with multiple felonies including criminal trespassing, attempted property destruction, forgery of official documents, and fraud. 6 county employees were placed on administrative leave pending investigation into their connections with the scheme. The local news ran a 3-part special on HOA overreach, featuring my story prominently. Dozens of other property owners came forward with similar experiences, not just with Lakeside Estates but with HOAs across the state. My attorney filed a civil suit against the HOA and Victor personally for damages to my property, harassment, and attempted theft through fraudulent means. When investigators searched Victor's home office, they discovered detailed plans for a luxury resort that would have replaced 6 family properties, including my ranch. Most satisfying was watching the Lakeside Estates HOA board dissolve as homeowners within the legitimate boundaries revolted against Victor's leadership and the negative publicity he had brought to their community. 3 months after the bulldozer incident, I hosted a barbecue for everyone who had stood by me. Paul and his crew were guests of honor, along with Sarah, other affected neighbors, and Sheriff Reynolds. We gathered on the very pasture the bulldozers had tried to destroy, now restored and green with spring growth. As the sun set over the mountains, Paul raised a toast. "To standing your ground. And to knowing who your real neighbors are," I added. The following week, we formalized what had started as mutual support during a crisis. 23 local property owners, including myself, signed papers creating a land heritage trust. The legal entity would ensure our properties could never be forcibly developed or incorporated into any HOA without unanimous consent. I installed a new gate at the entrance to my ranch, stronger than the original. Beside it stands a simple sign that reads, "Private property, protected by veterans and good neighbors." The Bulldozers never returned. Victor Harmon eventually accepted a plea deal that included restitution to all affected property owners and a ban from serving on any HOA board for life. The luxury resort was never built. Sometimes at sunset, I sit on my porch and look out over the fields my grandfather once tended. I think about how close I came to losing it all, and how a community of people who understand the true meaning of property rights stood together to protect not just my land but a principle. In a world where money and power often prevail, we proved that community and courage can still win the day. My ranch remains what it has always been, a piece of my family's legacy, preserved for generations to come. And no HOA will ever change that. Thank you for watching this incredible true story. If you enjoyed it, please hit that subscribe button and share with friends who might be dealing with similar HOA nightmares. Let me know in the comments what you thought and where you're watching from. Your support keeps these real stories coming.